Take a look at these guys. It doesn't matter how often I see them, they still make me excited every time. I have over 20 hobbies, and sometimes they converge. I'm in my garden today, and while I'm here, I want to show you how one of my favorite native trees and my garden's winter cover crop converge, and how it affects the rocks beneath. Out in the Pacific Northwest, we have a number of deciduous trees, and deciduous means that they lose their leaves in the wintertime, and they grow new ones in the spring and summer months. This expels a lot of resources, and some of those resources are too precious to lose. Nitrogen is one of the most tight resources for growth here, so most trees pull it back down out of the leaves into the root systems for future use. This turns the leaves different colors. But hold on, one tree in the Pacific Northwest does not do this. The Red Alder. Here in the Pacific Northwest, the red alder is a fairly unique tree. All of its leaves fall down green. Why would that happen? Nitrogen is a precious resource for plants. Hold on. It's a precious resource for plants if they can only get it from the soil. When I worked at a park in Washington State, I noticed some roots sticking out of the soil on the edge of a stream, and I noticed something odd about them. They had these orange little clusters of nodules. And I was super excited to see them because I knew what they were. Nitrogen-fixing nodules on red alder roots. Alders have formed a special relationship with Frankia genus bacteria. And those little orange-colored nodules house the Frankia bacteria. They take atmospheric nitrogen out of the air and turn it into ammonia that the plant can use for proteins and other nitrogen-heavy processes. This gives alders the ability to not only access nitrogen from the soil, but also the atmosphere. So when the fall wind comes, the confident alder just drops its green leaves, knowing that next spring it will have no deficit to make more. Because of this ability, the tree tends to be a pioneer. It can grow in some pretty devastated environments, and it gets the benefit of having low competition in the canopy in those areas. This comes into play with forest successional growth. Red alders are usually the first tree to grow in an environment that has been devastated and lost all of its trees. And because of this, when you run into logging areas, some of the first trees you see growing often are red alders. And all of that nitrogen fixing they do paves the way for a healthier future forest. But that nitrogen fixing can also affect the geology slightly in those areas. All of that extra nitrogen that the red alders create makes more nitric acid, which can then break down the surface levels of rock in that area and give the trees access to the nutrients that are inside those rocks. Some of these nutrients include things like calcium and phosphorus, as well as almost 20 other kinds of base nutrients. So this tree captures nutrients for future forests, not only from the atmosphere, but the soil and the rocks below. So how does this loop back around to my garden? Well, let me put it this way. If I lived next to the edge of a forest and I wanted to get nitrogen material for my garden, I would probably just go to the forest and pick up alder leaves and amend the soil with them. But I don't live next to the edge of a forest. So I found another plant that can help me. These are fava beans, and I started the seeds in my garden last October. They've gotten to be about 4.5 feet tall now, and mostly thrived through the winter months. We've begun to pick the beans and the top leaves for eating, but that is not the main reason we grew these in the garden. This plant plays a role in my garden's successional growth. Let me pull one of them up. Do you see those little nodules? Fava beans also have nitrogen-fixing nodules on their roots. So all winter and spring long, these plants have been collecting extra nitrogen from the air with the help of rhizobium bacteria. Now it's time for me to plant the next crop for the season, and I'll be leaving all of the leaves and roots from these favas on the ground to help provide nutrients for the future summer garden. So yep, that is a place where gardening, forest ecology, and geology all cross paths. See you next time.